Good morning.
Good to have you here. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for making the drive down the 101. That's, I sometimes wish I had a taser when I'm coming down the 101.
There are times you might need one.
But tell us a little bit about Taser. It was your brainchild, you and a co-founder. How did this all start?
So, well, the Taser actually started back in the 1960s by a NASA scientist, a guy who was actually the chief scientist of the Apollo project in the early 60s. And while he was working for NASA, he read in the newspaper one morning that following the Kent State shootings and a lot of the violence that was happening in the war protests in the 1960s, President Johnson had made it a national priority to develop non-lethal weapons. And so Jack was sort of fascinated by this, and he actually reached back into his childhood when he'd read a book called Tom Swift and His Electric Rifle. Now, back in the 1920s, 1930s, Tom Swift was the Star Wars of that day. This was like the big science fiction reads. And so Jack basically had this vision. He said, the president says we need non-lethal weapons. He knew enough about electricity that it can paralyze you in certain situations. And so he began working on this product, which he ended up naming after his childhood hero, Tom Swift.
So that's the Taser is an acronym for Thomas
A. Swift's electric rifle.
Oh, well, that's very cool.
So a lot of people don't know.
And now Taser is just a word that we all recognize. It's kind of like when somebody wants a soft drink and they say, I'm going to have a Coke. It's, you guys are you're the first to market and the brand everybody thinks of.
Yeah,
well, that's awesome.
It's pretty flattering. We've had a lot of exposure in pop culture, whether it's in Clint Eastwood movies or everybody remembers the scene from The Hangover, or just about every police comedy now has tasers in it.
Oh, I always think of, don't tase me, bro.
Yep. Yeah, that was quite a moment. That was the most memorable phrase of 2007, according to the people who rate that stuff.
Awesome. Did you plant that guy to holler that out?
We did not. To be honest, 2005 and 2006 were pretty controversial years. We went from a garage in Tucson and then exploded into a lot of success. And when we became successful, many people will remember, there's a lot of controversy about this new idea of using electricity to incapacitate people. And so we had a lot of negative publicity, frankly, and it was right on the end of that the don't tase me, bro thing happened. So when that first happened, we sort of thought, oh my gosh, here we go again. But to be honest, that one kind of turned things around where, the guy was fine, and at the end of the day, most people looking at it kind of came to the conclusion that he wanted something like that to happen, and
yeah.
It happened.
Well, you know what, I have a lot of free time. I watch a lot of Cops, to reconnect with old family members and check in, see how they're doing. And it's always funny to me, whenever you see a guy holed up in a hostage situation and they go, we're gonna release the guard dogs. If he's ever been nailed by a dog before, he's like, no, dude, I don't want that, I'm coming out. And I've noticed the same thing happens if he's ever been tasered, he don't want a second dose of that.
Yeah, you don't want to do it again.
Now, speaking of which, and we had some legal issues. I volunteered to be tasered today. No, I didn't. But have you ever been tasered?
I've done it 7 times.
Excuse me?
Yeah, 7.
Voluntarily, how many times?
Yeah, 7.
Okay. Thought maybe a wild night in Old Town. Okay, give us, 7. What do you, that's crazy.
Well, to be honest, in the early days, the first hit I took was, you've got to sort of lead from the front, as they say. When people ask me if it's safe or not, I can take you through all the medical studies, or I can show you a video of me taking a hit. And then a lot of the subsequent ones were, frankly, when we were developing some of our newer products, back when we didn't have the research dollars to go get external volunteers, we did some Taser validation, shall we say, on ourselves.
Wow.
And then over time, as we've introduced new technology, every time we've rolled out a major new technology, it's sort of been a credo that the leadership of the company should put our money where our mouth is and take a hit from it ourselves before we roll it out into the real world.
Is there usually an open bar before that happens?
On at least 2 occasions, there was some alcohol involved.
Well, we got 1 million cases of beer on the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. I'm getting a couple, man, here come the questions. Here's a question, can you do a demo on Bob?
That's certainly doable.
I'm guessing that did not come from Bob. It came from Mrs. Bob. Well, here's a great question. Do all police officers using tasers have to be tasered?
That really depends on the agency. Some places require it. Other places forbid it, and you get everything in the middle. We generally think it's a good idea to give an officer the chance to volunteer so that they know what they're going to do, what to expect when they use it in the field, because it's unlike anything you've ever experienced until you've experienced it. And if you're going to rely on it in potential life and death situations, having an understanding of its effects is a pretty good thing. But there is some risk of injury. We've had some people get injured during exposures, usually from falls. When you get hit with a taser, you fall down, and sometimes we've had chipped teeth and some broken bones. But
it's nothing. Wussies. Well, that's cool. I'm thinking you could probably, I haven't tried this, but you could probably go YouTube people getting tasered. There's probably all kinds of.
You'll get a lot of hits.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm talking about like cops, because I have seen those cops that stand there and they go, go ahead and hit me, and then they get up and go, I don't want to do that anymore. Can't imagine doing it 7 times. You're the man.
I think I'm done.
I hurt myself crossing the jumper cable batteries one time. I can't imagine doing that. We joke about this, but I know that you guys probably quantify this and keep track of it. There've been a lot of lives saved because of your product. Any idea?
Yeah. Well, we have about 700,000 of these weapons in use around the world. They get used about once every 2 years. So that means, on average, there's about 350,000 taser uses a year worldwide. And out of that, about 5% are situations that are classified as potential deadly force, where police could have used a firearm instead. So if you run the numbers, it ends up about 130,000 people that we've saved from life-threatening situations.
Wow. So chipped teeth and a broken nose is better than dying from lead poisoning.
Absolutely. And actually, it's not just even compared to a gun. A taser is far safer than a physical fight. If you get out of control, or let's say I've got a 22-year-old son. Let's say he gets out of control. If the cops show up, if they have to use force, I want them to use a taser on him, because it has about 2 injuries out of every 1,000 uses. If police have to physically subdue him, that's got about a 50% injury rate. Beating someone into submission is very dangerous. Right. A lot more so than a taser. Thing is, though, the taser's new and different and somewhat sensational. So a lot of people that read the news have this perception, my gosh, these things are dangerous. Well, the whole reason that you read about them in the news is, frankly, the fact that they're so safe that when something bad occurs, it becomes very newsworthy and very controversial.
Are there different, what do you call the wire, the connector?
Yeah, the cartridges.
Are there different lengths of that? Because I would want one that was like 100 yards long.
We've actually developed long-range systems, but we find that most applications or most uses occur within 7 to 10 feet. Yeah. It's pretty rare that you're actually engaging somebody really far out. So we sell cartridges up to 25-foot range.
How many volts do you get zapped by with one?
So about 50,000 volts. Although that sounds kind of scary, you can get hit by 50,000 volts on a static shock on a doorknob if on a dry day in certain places in this country. So the voltage is not really relevant to the amount of current that goes into you. You may have heard it's not the volts that get you, it's the amps. So the amount of electrical amperes we use is really quite low. It's 0.002 amperes. We just happen to tune it to the same frequency my brain is using to control my muscles right now. And so when we plug a taser in, it's like a remote control that's going to take over control of my nervous system on a temporary basis. And it's really not pleasant. But it's very short-lived. When we turn it off, it's like a light switch. When you see somebody hit with a taser, it looks a bit like a seizure. And then when it shuts off, they are immediately back to normal.
Wow. It's like later, do those people have any superpowers?
No, I wish, because I'd be in much better shape now.
That's awesome. Well, I know when I hear the word taser, I just think of that product, but I know you guys are cutting edge of other stuff going on. Tell us about what's on the drawing board, what's out there.
The fastest growing part of our business is now in the wearables space. We make wearable cameras for cops, which in the post-Ferguson world, now there's just a massive cry for police officers to wear cameras. In fact, Mesa here in Arizona was one of our first customers that helped us develop this product. And most of the officers here in Mesa are now wearing them. And the idea is, there's a big problem with mistrust between police and their communities. And we learned about that firsthand as we rolled tasers out. There's a lot of controversy about how tasers are being used. And so we looked at this, and the way we tend to look at things as a technology company is, okay, we can argue about this, or maybe there's a way we can solve this concern. And so we looked at it and we said, well, if cops were wearing cameras, then we wouldn't have to guess about what happened in these incidents. We would know. And for example, in Ferguson, I think it would be a very different story. We would know what happened if there was a video of that incident, and there's not. So we started making cameras in 2006. We got around 100,000 of those in the field, various types that officers can wear. But really the interesting part that very few people know about is Taser is the leading cloud software company in law enforcement. So we have a service called evidence.com, which is basically iTunes for police. So the challenge that Apple solved in the late 1990s was people had MP3 players, but how do I handle all this, getting all the stuff on and off it? Well, if you're gonna have 1,000 police officers wearing cameras, they're gonna generate millions of videos over a few years. And traditionally, police are storing videos on CDs. Well, you need warehouses full of these things and a lot of staff to deal with that. I mean, when was the last time in your personal life you even burned something to a CD? We just don't do that anymore. We do it all online. And so with evidence.com, that marries with our cameras. So for example, when we got calls from police departments in Missouri following Ferguson, we could have them live in days. We just ship the cameras out and give them a dock and it plugs into the internet. So a lot of people don't think of Taser yet as a software company, but we have around 3,000 agencies on that system, and it's the fastest growing part of our business.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, it's so funny. I've seen those videos where people don't realize they're being recorded, and their version of what happened versus to the cops like, no, let's roll the tape back and see it. It changes the whole dynamic of that interaction.
Yeah, where we've deployed the cameras, we see decreases of between 75 and 90% in complaints. Right here in Mesa, they saw a 75% reduction in use of force complaints. Fact is, most people that come into lodge complaints against the police, they're upset, they're emotional, but a lot of times, police go through more verbal abuse than any other profession I can think of. If you actually watch these videos of the way police are treated day in and day out, unless you're like a customer service agent for an airline, I don't think you know what it's like to be a cop.
Or a stand-up comedian. That's awesome, yeah. That's all you got to do. If you ever get a chance to do one of those ride-alongs with a police officer, do it. I've done it, but I did it from the back seat, and it's not near as much fun as when you're up front. But well, that's cool. Well, so right now I got a question that came in. How many tasers are out there? I think you said 700,000.
About 700,000 in law enforcement use, and then about another 300,000 that we've sold to consumers. So it is available as a self-defense tool as well.
Seriously, I could buy one today.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what's on my Christmas list.
Yeah.
Do I need? And did you came out with like pink ones for women or?
We did.
That's awesome.
We did, yeah. We've found that, frankly, a lot of women were intimidated by gun-shaped looking devices, and we wanted to make something that they were more comfortable with. That's actually why I started the business. So the reason I found the Taser inventor, who was retired in Tucson back in the early 1990s, is I had a couple friends that were shot and killed at the Hyatt Gainey Ranch, and in a road rage incident. And I became very interested in the whole topic of self-defense and gun control. And I was on an exchange program in Europe, and the Europeans think we're nuts. And 35,000 people are shot and killed in this country every year. And I'm not pro-gun or anti-gun, I'm sort of neutral on that issue, but I tend to look at things, again, as technology and say, well, why is it that the state of the art in self-defense in the late 1990s was still shooting a hole in somebody? You'd think that we would have better technology, and that's really what Taser is all about. Our long-term mission is we want to make the bullet obsolete. People would stop killing each other. If we had the Star Trek phaser today, tell me who wouldn't want that instead of this device that blows holes in people. And we're a company that's committed to making that happen. It may take us another 50 years, but we're going to give people choices that are so good that you don't have to kill people to protect yourself. That we think that's what most people will choose.
If there's somebody here, either in our room today or watching on TV that would like to, for self-defense, would like to get a Taser, where do you get those?
Typically, well, you can go to taser.com, which is our website, of course, or most gun stores will carry Tasers as well. So anywhere you can go in to buy lethal force, you can also buy a non-lethal option. Wow.
Is there a license required to own a Taser?
There's not. There's not. It's categorized in the same way legally as a pepper spray or as a stun gun.
Wow. Well, yeah, I like my odds better with a Taser than some pepper spray.
It's quite a bit more effective. Particularly what you'll run into, pepper spray is a chemical irritant. It works great if you need to disperse a crowd of people or something, but if you have somebody who's upset or angry and you add pain, it actually typically makes it worse. They're going to get more upset, more angry, more violent.
My luck, I'd get like a Cajun bad guy. There you go. I need more of that. That's awesome. So what's the future hold? I don't know. It's early in the morning. What's the future for Taser? Growth is going to continue because as technology improves, boy, you guys, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, we're really excited about the cloud and wearables business for us right now is huge. Obviously, our heart and soul is all about the Taser weapons. We're always working on new innovations there. But we believe bringing this idea of transparency into policing is a game changer. That, frankly, police get scapegoated a lot in the media. Because what will happen, you have an incident like what happened in Ferguson, which is certainly a tragedy. And you'll get all of the people around the police agency saying all sorts of inflammatory things about what happened that may or may not be true. What happens when you go to the police department for their side of the story? No comment. They can't comment because they're an official agency of the government. The expectation is if you say something, it's got to be 100% right. So until they're through the investigation, they can't really say anything because they don't officially have it locked down. They don't really know. And so what happens is police just get pummeled with all these negative assertions, and then by the time the investigation's done, the news story is normally passed. So what we're finding with these cameras, I'll give you one example. In Miami Beach, in Daytona, Florida, last year, police shot a man in bed. And when the police chief showed up, people were throwing stuff in his car. They said, what's going on? You guys are executioners. You're shooting people in bed. Well, they released the video of the incident, and while it's true, the man they shot was in bed, he had fallen onto the bed because he'd taken a woman hostage, and he was actively plunging a knife into her abdomen when they shot him. So the police didn't have to say a word. They just released the video, and people could see, oh, wow, this isn't what we thought. Yeah, he was in bed, that's true, but he was in the act of murdering someone. The police actually saved this woman's life. And we've had maybe 5 or 6 incidents like that where a situation that could have exploded the way that Ferguson didn't explode because people were able to see what really happened. Now, again, I'm not saying, I wasn't there in Ferguson. I don't know what happened. Maybe the video would have shown that the police officer did something completely awful, but at least we would have known. Right. And I think it's the uncertainty is typically worse. When you don't know what happened, the things that people conjure up in their mind is typically a lot worse than reality. And that makes the situation more inflammatory.
Absolutely. When I used to watch like Batman when I was a kid, they would always, the bad guy was getting away in a car, they had like a net that they would shoot a gun in this big thing and would someday. I'd like to have this on video evidence that was my idea. So you guys come out with the big car-catching net out of a taser gun.
The Batman net gun. We'll owe you some royalties on that one.
That's all. Hey, you know what? You talking about safety and all that, I read a study this week that 3 of the top 10 safest cities in the country are here in the Valley of the Sun. Did you see that?
I did not.
And we'll talk about this later, but I think that maybe it's a coincidence that Taser's right up the road, huh?
We'll take the credit, sure.
Let's see what we got here. Oh, you know what? We'd also like to thank the reason you're here, other than to tell us about this, the connection that we had was through Frank Milstead from the Mesa Police Department. So thank you, Frank, for introducing us to, yeah, big round of applause. Frank is the reason that we were able to make this connection. I know you know Frank because he's been tasered a bunch of times. And you have been, how many times? Just once, and then you learn. Have you ever heard of a guy getting voluntarily tasered 7 times? What kind of psycho would that be? That's cool. Here we go. Have you developed a taser without a string or connector?
We did. Actually, the reason when I first started the business, we had this concept for building a wireless bullet with a taser engine inside of it that you could launch downstream. And we actually created that in around 2007. It was launched from a shotgun. And to be honest, it failed as a commercial product, which was really an interesting lesson for me, that sometimes the best technology doesn't resonate in the market. And what we learned, particularly in law enforcement, is that most of the stuff they're doing happens up close. So these long-range weapons are really specialized for the most dangerous of situations when they want to hit somebody who's really far away. And the other thing we learned was while this round worked great in the lab, every one of these was like a small flying space vehicle. I mean, these things were super expensive to make, very difficult to make, and they weren't as reliable as they needed to be. So we ended up discontinuing that product. Customers were upset because it was too expensive, and frankly, we only had about a 70% success rate. And again, for me, it was a real learning experience that sometimes great ideas that look great in the lab, if you don't sort of have the dynamics right with customer expectations, may fail as a product.
Speaking of cost, if I go into a local gun store and want to get a taser, what's the price range?
Typically around $400. $400.
It's
about the same as a decent handgun.
Is there a waiting period like on a?
No.
Yeah, and no license.
No license.
Yeah,
no.
Not even a marriage license.
We do register them to you, and when you fire the device, it spreads out confetti printed with your serial number. So it's not really the choice of criminals. We've had a few criminals use them, and typically we can trace back to where it was purchased. And
that's awesome.
So we can track you
little
down.
Numbers. It's like, hey, that guy was here.
Yep.
Well, don't do that at a New Year's Eve party. It's the wrong kind of confetti. How much are they? We covered that. Let's see. Talk about the number. I think that's about all the questions. Well, man, I'm telling you, we're almost out of time. You have it. What's the takeaway? What would you like if you were pitching your company? What's the one thing you'd like for all these people here and at home to know about Taser?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd like people to know about Taser is that we are a group of people that really likes to focus on solving big, hairy problems. There's a lot of great companies out there that do great work. One thing that we're particularly proud of is we wade into controversial subjects that most people wouldn't want to get in the middle of. Like selling equipment to police, turns out is very high liability. Over the past 10 years, we've spent more on litigation than on research and development, which is just a function of the country that we live in. And when you make equipment that's used in dangerous situations, you're going to have some bad outcomes. We wear that as a bit of a badge of pride, though, that we look at it, we say, we believe we're doing important work, and we're supporting the heroic men and women of law enforcement. And if I had one final point, I'd say go out and hug a cop. Because if you do a ride along and you realize what they put up with all day long, they're typically not interacting with regular, normal, everyday people. Most cops are dealing with the problem elements of society all day, every day. And it is, it's a wonder that people take that job. Every time I do a ride along with a cop, I'm just thankful. Thank you guys for doing this, because you get verbally abused, you get you put your life on the line every day, you get second guessed for everything that you do. It's a fairly thankless job, but it's a really heroic one. And we're delighted to be a partner to law enforcement and help give them some technology to make these dangerous jobs maybe a little safer.
That's awesome. A couple of last quick questions came in. Are there people that are immune to Taser?
No, there's no immunity to it. There are some cases where a Taser is not 100% effective. So we launch out 2 electrodes. So basically when you fire the Taser, 2 darts launch out. As long as they spread about a foot apart or more, which means I need to have some distance from you, so we try to train officers to stay back. At about a foot apart, the electricity spreads across enough of the body that you're toast, we got you. But if I shoot you in close and the darts are very close together, then you might have a more localized effect. So you will sometimes see people who don't fall down or who don't seem to be completely impaired. That usually has more to do with sort of the geometry of where the electricity is affecting them rather than any sort of immunity.
So where's the optimum place? If I was to be tasered, where would you want to shoot me?
In the back. Because from your brain, you've got the spinal cord that comes down the back, and all the nerves emanate. So the perfect shot would be on either side of the spinal cord, so you'd run the electricity right through your spinal column. Because what that would do is that would activate all those nerves, and every muscle attached to every one of those nerves is now ours. We own it.
Well, see, that's where I'd have you, because you're assuming I have muscle. Yeah. And that ain't happening. That is cool. Last question. How do you reset them? Like if you missed, you could go, hang on a second and run.
Yeah. So we do have, the original Tasers were single shot. We now have double shot versions. So it's got a backup shot built in. But after you're done, you just replace a cartridge that's got the wires and everything you need.
Very cool. Well, I think that's all the questions. I know we're running late on time. And I know you're super busy. I can't thank you enough for coming. And by the way, round of applause if you've seen the Taser building there on the west side of the 101. Anybody seen it? It's gorgeous. Is there such a thing as stopping in someday and
Sure.
And as long as we don't cause any trouble.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I don't want to get tasered. I mean, is it open to the public? Can they come in and see anything? Or
Typically,
no?
you'd want to, you can send me an email to rick@taser.com. Okay. Let me know you're coming, and we'll set something up. We don't do, like, you know,
there's no just tours or anything like that. Okay.
Well, we can set up a tour, but it's just not, you know, people don't just stop in. And we keep it a fairly secure facility just because of the nature of what we do. Got to be a little careful not to have, you know, everybody just running through the place.
Yeah. Oh, I think I know how you could clear them out real quick.
Yeah, we can.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. And before you leave, we've got a gift for you. One of our sponsors that does this every month. And boy, how convenient is this? It's about a mile away. You ever been to Cobblestone Auto Spa?
I have.
Well, here's a $100 detail gift card for you.
Sweet.
To go in there and get your, and instead of tipping them, just show them a taser. And they'll do the white walls extra good. How about a big round of applause for Mr. Taser, Rick Smith. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for coming in.